Hello and welcome to another episode of My Dinner with Gabe, film review show on River West Radio with Zav LaPlay and Gabe Van Handel. And we have a very, very awesome and special guest today. We have Carl Bogner, my favorite member of the film community in Milwaukee, here to join us again with his presence, talk about film, talk about movies, talk about Chris Marker. Great man of the film world who passed on 3 weeks ago. He was a French filmmaker, an exploratory documentary short film subject maker, and a man who was unafraid of pushing boundaries and creating and crashing into chaos. The man was a visionary, an artist, an influence, and a revolutionary. He studied with Sartre, and he made a lot of friends and a lot of enemies along the way. He died on his 91st birthday. But we'll get to that later. First off, we have 2 weeks of movie news to give you. We didn't do a show last week, so it's the 24th, but we got box office news from 2 weeks to get to you.
Let me ask you this. It seems to me, just in terms of the video store, we suddenly got tons of really interesting new releases. Mm-hmm. Is this the time of year when they start putting out good stuff?
Well, this is a time of year when a lot of... Late August is an interesting season because the blockbuster season has calmed down. May is a huge blockbuster month. July is a huge blockbuster month. So there's a lot of stuff that comes out in late August that's kind of thoughtful, and there's just solid romantic comedies that come out. There's usually films for the over 60 crowd, for the over 35 crowd. There's usually one solid hardcore action film from Lionsgate that comes out. And usually their undependable fare throughout the year is just thrown out at random, but they have usually a very intelligent film that comes out in spring. Not very intelligent, but a different film, a film that pushes the boundaries of the genre that it's within. The Cabin in the Woods being the case this spring, and The Expendables 2 being the ungenre pushing movie, but still just stellar, solid. Direct filmmaking doing what it does best, having people being killed by a large group of action stars. I went to go see this film, and I'll get to that review in a little bit. But there's a lot of movies that are coming out on video on DVD and Blu-ray. And with the advent of on-demand, with the advent of torrents and of piracy and of the ease, access, and availability of being able to get whatever you want within 3 minutes of just clicking a download, the studios don't have a second to lose. A movie comes out in the theater, it has to be available for people to rent at their local Redbox and on their Netflix or their Netflix Instant Queue within 2 months, or people lose interest. People have no time for anything anymore. They're on their phones, they're on their PS3s, they're running around, and there's just no attention span. There's none of the 9 months. There's none of the 9 month poetic lapse for videos to come out like there used to be for so long. There's none of this time for people to forget about something and then remember it. There's none of the death and then the rebirth of a movie. Everything is just come and go so fast that there's no going. That there's no coming or going. It's just bam and then it's gone, and then people want a sequel, and that's what studios have been giving people. A lot of sequels and a lot of remakes, and this is what you want, this is what you get. I could talk about that for a long time, but I'm not going to. So Zav, what is your opinion about that, about movies coming on the theater? And then, I mean, you run a video store.
Well, for me, it's a little disconcerting because that's how I make my living, is through renting videos. And I've always known that it's gonna, it's not something that'll last forever. But at the same time, it's one of those things where it kind of threatens my, existentially, it's a little threatening to me. Mm-hmm. But that's just part of being, it's the same thing with digital, going from filmmaking to digital video, because I sell filmmaking supplies here. And maybe, Carl, you might be able to talk about that too, because I'm sure it threatens the digital era is a threat to film school as well in certain ways, right?
Well, except that film school is a place where people get to discover working in 16mm film. And they can get a real charge out of it.
Right.
I mean, we have seen attendance in our basic film class wane, but it comes back in fits and starts. I mean, there are a lot of young people who are excited that when I say young people, I'm old. I don't mean to. I mean students. I mean to say,
right,
who are excited by this material that they've never held in their hands before.
Uh-huh.
And also, it's easy for them to get access to projectors and different pieces
Right.
of equipment.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
it's actually more affordable than it's ever been.
Yeah.
So Kodak is seemingly going under, and things seem grim. And the Oriental is getting rid of their 35 millimeter projectors and converting to digital.
Uh-huh.
And so all the signs are there.
Yeah.
But I'm not convinced that entirely it goes away. We're still processing film regularly in the film department.
Yeah, I don't think things go away. Like, for example, the video store. I can imagine 10 years from now, someone still renting a video. Just like right now, I still have people who come in here and still want to rent a VHS tape once in a while.
Sure.
So there's always going to be that, but it's definitely on a downslope.
Sure.
And so then it's just a matter of adapting to the new reality.
Yeah.
And then there's always this other thing that happens where it becomes nostalgic and people want to hold on to that thing that
or they
once
like the
was.
look, or the look might become
Or the
appealing.
experience.
Well, yeah.
I mean, in my case, it's the experience of not like a red box is very convenient, but it's experience in terms of an experience. It's sort of alienating, and then of course, Netflix and so on is just like watching a YouTube video. You're just clicking. So you don't have this, you don't go out into the world and intermingle with the actual boxes and people and their opinions. And those things people hold on to those things for a while,
But when when I go to a movie theater, which I love, I don't really go to be with other people. So I don't know what you're saying. I'm very happy about being
I actually
entirely
bet you do, though.
only because I have to. I'll be like, oh, how's the crowd tonight or something, But
But wouldn't you think if you went?
But I don't want to talk about the movie afterwards. I just
No, but what? But
Exactly.
But for example, if you went to, if there was a box somewhere and it was like in a bus station and you just sat in this booth by yourself, a dark booth, and watched
and
a
they
movie.
kept feeding quarters into it until the. What are you talking
before
about?
the
What sort of box is this?
For some reason, the seat is wet.
Wouldn't that be alienating? There's something about being in the presence of other people, even strangers. I love being in a theater all by myself, but you still it feels different.
Sure. No, I don't object to other people being there.
Yeah.
But the box, I like the big screen.
Yeah.
I
Right,
like
the big screen.
So
Yeah.
that's why I don't think your box thing relates.
I see what you mean. So if it was a movie theater with no people in it, but just you by yourself, you'd
That'd be
be just
okay.
as happy.
I'd be
Yeah.
totally fine with that.
Yeah.
But then it depends on the movie. There's some movies that have been better because I saw them with a crowd.
Yeah.
Comedies.
Right.
Comedies.
Sometimes
or
it's
horror
annoying.
Films.
And I gotta say, sometimes I like a bad or a rude audience during movies where that's appropriate. Like Mayfair has a large African American population per screening, a high African American per screening height per capita per screening ratio, and there are some films like The Artist where when you see them there, people are talking through them through the most part of it, or doing something that is very common with an African American audience, which like talking more. Or talking to the characters in the film, or making comments throughout the film.
That was a characteristic of a film that didn't bother to let the characters talk. So I think that was The Artist and not the African African American audience.
Certain comedies, I think, are actually made better. I remember I saw X-Men in Manhattan with an audience that literally was a character of the film, and it was amazing. As good as it gets. Literally has never been as funny as the first time I saw it because of literally the crowd that I watched it with. Just this sentimentality and this ability to all of a sudden you are not alone in some ways. Hitchcock was obsessed with it, especially through the 50s. The idea of being alienated and being alone as an audience member, but also being a character as an audience member in the film, and also being the idea of the whole audience being a character in the film.
Yeah, well, I was going to say also, it's very much a cultural thing because in India, the cinema is a totally different experience. It's a 3-hour thing. People bring picnics. they bring tons of food, and kids are running up and down the aisles, and people are yelling at the screens, singing
thousands
along.
of people too. Thousands of people in auditoriums.
I think that the sanctimoniousness of cinema is actually, you could almost say it's more of a European. Maybe it comes from the way we attend church. You know, it's also like sanctimonious, and people don't rise up and exhibit themselves. It's a time of reflection and this idea of being austere. So maybe that's something that, you know, it's just a cultural thing. But I'm not sure how we got there with.
Anyway,
yeah. Something about movie going. We were talking about as a communal experience or not versus.
Oh right, right.
Just going to like a vending machine in a grocery store and getting something.
Or more realistically, clicking your. Clicking on your laptop or clicking on your flat screen remote or something and getting the movie.
I mean, given that, especially in the summer in Milwaukee, I don't have that much choice of what I get to see. It's like if I want to see an old film, I mean, I do love, like I've mentioned before we went on air, that these aren't old films, but I've been interested in Brian De Palma lately, watching his films from the 80s. And, you know, it's great to be able to, I mean, I've been getting these from the library. My apologies.
Oh no, you should.
You know, and getting DVD and getting to go through those. I did try to watch one on iTunes, but I fell asleep, and then you know, 24-hour rental period ended. Or something.
Oh yeah.
But so I mean, I love getting to be an eclectic moviegoer, and
which is, I mean, it's just like the web in general.
I don't know how
I love the fact that I can just click on any YouTube video. I can just type in the name of an author, and then listen to them talk on like book TV or, you know, something like that, which you never could do with television.
Right.
So in a sense, we're liberated as viewers. We're able to travel much more far and wide with our tastes
if you could,
and interests.
Walk to the River West movie theater and they're having a Chris Marker retrospective or something.
Right. Or if they had 100 rooms, and well, then that would be kind of it would be like a multiplex. But if you had something where, I don't know, maybe that is what a multiplex is in a sense. A multiplex is like having many channels to choose from.
Well, and that's the difference between
that's
really true. But there's a huge difference between the multiplex and the old mom and pop style cinema or the old neighborhood cinema. I mean, cinemas originally, like even small towns, had 5 or 6. You know, they used to have like 5 or 6 theaters when the studio system was still up and kicking before 1947. Columbia, Warner's, Paramount, and then, you know, like maybe an independent theater or two, or like Republic or like independent films or whatever would show. But by and large, one studio, one theater, and then once the studio system started to collapse in 47, that was like, well, a theater can be owned by a theater chain. And you still only had like 2 movies at like a theater, or like 1 or 2, maybe 3, and then you still had multiple theaters. Now with the multiplex, I just feel like you've got all these choices, but you don't really make a decision. I feel that way even with the video store sometimes, or with Redbox especially. I just feel like when you're left with like just all these options, the instantaneousness of it, you really don't get to just make a decision. It's not as finite. I not being able to hold it in my hands while I'm picking it really disturbs me. There's just something about it that really bothers me, and that I just find really sort of evil. I really don't like Redbox. I love this video. I love River's film and video because I still get to hold something in my hand while I'm into. I mean, when I had a 6-movie account here, you remember, I'd walk around here for 2 hours, and I would pick 6 movies up right when I would walk in here, and then I would put usually 4 of them back, and then put 4 more back, and then put 4 more back, and then leave with like completely different titles from what I came in with. That was my favorite part of the experience of even watching the films, was coming in here and browsing the titles and playing the movies out in my head as I was picking and choosing. Yeah. And then this multiplex, I just feel like what Carl said is correct. You've got all these choices of really, really bad movies essentially that are basically playing the same thing. And even if
maybe not even bad, maybe they're good movies, but they're very similar. They're of one kind of paradigm or something.
And it's the same different genres and paradigms sort of over and over again. So when something good or even like halfway interesting comes out, it's just like, thank God. And normally it's like, and even like 10 or 15 years ago, a standard or an average or just a good movie was just an average movie. that wasn't something to be admired or to be like, go see this, please. Finally, an intelligent movie came along. Now it's like, when these reviews I've been reading of even just like a basic broad adult, like they just praise it. They're like, finally a mature film for adults. They cannot believe it. Like they just can't believe that a movie is made for someone over the age of 25. They're just like shocked. So I find that's a big phenomenon too, that everything is like safeguarded because children are brought along to movies more than they ever have been, and children are present during movies more than they ever have been. So it's like, well, you got to worry about, well, does this please the kids? So there's all this kid-friendly fare and all this and so much stuff just has sophomore humor in it, and things are playing safe rather than like daring. Sequels and remakes where it's like, well, I know what that is already, so it's like, well, yeah, let's do that. Safe. I can't stand safe stuff. It just bugs the crap out of me. So anyway, we've got some box office news from almost 2 weeks ago now, from August 10th and 12th.
Oh, you need to see the laptop?
I need to see the.
Do you want to reveal that we have a laptop here?
Oh, here you go.
It's okay. So, from 2 weeks ago on a Monday.
I was just going to say, if I sound different than last time I was on, I have a mustache now.
I hear your mustache.
All right.
Born Legacy opened number one.
Viewing audience.
And that opened with a strong but not amazing $38 million. The campaign opened second with $26 million, which was about at expectations. They were hoping that film might actually lead above The Bourne Legacy because it has two strong comedic leads. The Dark Knight Rises finally got taken off of its throne of first place and it sank to third. However, $18 million is no
Is that new Bourne film out?
It came out 2 weeks ago.
Oh, it did?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then Hope Springs, it opened first.
We should review that one
2 weeks ago. I wanted to go see that right away, and then I read like kind of subpar reviews of it that are just like it's good. It's it's got Jeremy Renner's eyes in it, which is good enough reason for me to ever see a movie with him in it. His presence alone, I find so startlingly cinematic. He has this presence and this sort of like, I love when he plays a good guy too, because he's so preternaturally evil and he's so inclined to do bad things to people. I feel like he just has this sort of like Mitchum-esque type of intensity. I could seriously watch that guy read like the nutrition facts on a Wheaties box, and I'd be on the edge of my seat. Hope Springs opened fourth with $19 million total. It opened 2 days early of its Friday debut. $14 million for that weekend for the mature above 40s crowd. Lots of really good buzz about that movie. I'll get to that. I did talk about that actually 2 weeks ago on our show. Many comparisons in that film to Scenes from a Marriage by Ingmar Bergman. Considering that this is a film with Tommy Lee Jones and Meryl Streep, I'm just really excited that a film that is pushed as like a dopey main like every and we talked about this, like the trailer for it looks dopey and dumb. The poster looks dopey and dumb and predictable. Like it looks like any Nora Ephron movie. It looks like any like the sequel to What Women Want. It literally just looks like just something carved, like cookie cuttered out. But apparently most of the movie literally has no music. It's dialogue driven, it's story driven, and it's apparently vast. Like there's huge sections of it that are daring and uncomfortable. And
Swedish.
And Swedish apparently. So that's cool. Total Recall in its second week. No big shockaroo here considering its C- cinema score and the fact that it was just piled with some of the worst reviews of the year, and I'm sure anyone who saw this movie hated it. Sank down to fifth place with $8 million. Diary of a Wimpy Kid fell. I'm not even going to bore you with the rest of the box office news. Bourne Legacy won. Campaign opened second, and Hope Springs was fourth that week. Kind of an uninteresting week at the box office, but overall, the Bourne Legacy's debut is a little bit small for such a strong franchise. The marketing has been pushed, and considering that the first three movies were based on books, the fact that this one went off of that mark and went off on an original screenplay with there was never just one. This was strong marketing, and this was a strong advertising campaign, and using Jeremy Renner to replace the ever marketable, ever present Matt Damon was a risky move, and apparently it paid off pretty decently. 52% male audience, not big surprise there. 70% over 30. B Cinema score isn't great, but word of mouth just might keep it propelled at the box office just might keep it over water. However, Expendable, and these were the notes I wrote before the next week's box office news. Expendables 2 is targeting the male, older demographic that this film was targeting into as well. What was going to happen? Well, we're going to find out in a minute. Farrell's debut with the campaign, not his strongest debut when compared to Step Brothers, $30 million. This film, by the way, pulled in $26 million. Not as strong as like Step Brothers or Anchorman, which 28. When Anchorman came out, and when Anchorman came out, that was considered a kind of a small,
just a long time ago,
just an unfamiliar. Yeah, and that was years ago too. That was 8 years ago. Other guys 35.5, and that was considered small. Talladega considered his middle of the road box office milestone, the one to sort of be compared with, $47 million. However, it's the strongest opening for a political satire ever, and the strongest debut for a movie about a political campaign ever. And
they keep track of these things.
And there's not really any comedy competition through August, so it's probably going to keep trucking. Total Recall dropped 69%. So that is what happened that week. Now I got some other box office news for you for this Monday. So this is actually relevant. Yeah, awesome. So.
Oh, so that was
That was 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
That was 2 weeks ago. That's my box office news from that. And so.
Is there any mention of Beasts of the Southern Wild?
Beasts of the Southern Wild. Let's look at where that was. I mean.
And Moonrise Kingdom supposedly was doing okay, right?
Oh yeah, it was killing it for most of its run. I mean, yeah, I talked about it on most shows. I'd say it was killing it in the top 10 for.
You went to Moonrise Kingdom twice, Carl?
For about 7 weeks.
And did you like it as much the second time?
I liked it more because the first time I saw it was at midnight, so I slept for the first 20 minutes.
Oh, yeah. I think I passed out a little bit.
So I saw the entire thing the second time.
Uh-huh.
I was very impressed. No, my brothers were in town, and I wasn't sure what to take them to see.
Oh, I see.
And I thought they would like that.
Did they?
Very much. One of my brothers didn't think it was appropriate that they killed a dog. Spoilers, and also he didn't think it was appropriate that those young actors were seen in their underwear.
Oh, right.
I thought that was one of the better scenes.
My brother's taste.
Yeah.
Zav and I both were basically French kissing the movie. We did a Wes Anderson show, and I don't think
that show in your underwear.
I think we were in our underwear actually. But it was yeah. I think it's the most in agreement we've ever been about a movie or about a filmmaker. To be honest,
did you guys like it?
It was we loved it.
We hate it. We panned it. No, I'm kidding.
We absolutely hated it. It was the worst film of the year.
Oh.
No, I liked it a lot. I thought it was one of his best films.
Yeah, I think it's pretty great.
Yeah.
I think it's really stellar.
Yeah.
It's irony done right. Is kind of how I look at it, and it's, here's a movie that's just like. It's cutesy, but it's everything that's perfect about cutesy, and it's intelligent, and it's just fiercely well made, fiercely beautiful, just wildly focused and expressionist. I mean, just some of the images in that movie are just, they brought tears to my eyes. They're just, I mean, the shot of that beach with the tent on it, that's one of the most beautiful images I've ever seen in a film, period. I mean, if you just take a still, I would love to, in fact, I've been thinking about this. I want to get a really, really high grain still of that and get that on my wall. I want a really nice print of that. And I've never made a print of a movie for my wall. I'd say maybe a close-up of Dave's face with the reflection of Hal and some of the lights in 2001. And those are like my by far two of my favorite images that I've ever seen.
Wow.
I mean, just the use of the color coral and orange and those. I mean, these are colors that normally would be repugnant, and he makes so much beauty out of ugliness, and he just perfects it. I mean, he just and we talked about this on the show, Zav. You brought this up, how he has the eye of a child. And that's how that we talked about that on the Spielberg show, how he has this way of looking at things from the perspective of a child, and he has a way of tapping into his own childhood. It seems like this era of when he was a child, probably, because we looked at how old he was, and we're like, well, he was probably a child around that era, and then he just taps into this joy, and he doesn't let something impede on it, and he sticks to it, and he goes to this era consistently, time and time again. Anyway, strong filmmaking from an awesome guy. So. Box office, August 17th through August 19th. Everything was kind of a modest debut. Expendables 2, $28 million. Not crazy stuff. They were expecting a $50 million debut. And this was less than the original debut. which was strange. Audience was 63% male, no shockaroo there. 65% over the age of 25. A- cinema score, which is excellent. Bourne Legacy has grossed much lower to date than 2 or 3, which were the strongest of the franchise, which by this point had grossed $131 million and $98 million respectively. Number 3 and number 2. This one's only grossed $70 million. Paranorman debuted this week as well, which I'm hugely excited about. It's a new horror film. It's a stop motion horror film from Focus Features, and that debuted third, which is a little disappointing for that. Stop motion features have a hard time at the box office. They really do. Coraline has been the biggest success so far with $16.8 million. Pirates the Band of Misfits, which Universal released earlier this year, was a huge disappointment, opening with 11. And a lot of intelligence, a lot of great filmmaking, and a lot of just great humorous movies that kids and adults should be watching. I'm sorry, not should be, but could be watching. I mean, these are really funny, really awesome movies, and they just, because of the stop motion or because of something, there's some sort of a divide between the audience and between them getting to these movies. They just they don't get the attention that I feel that they deserve. So I hope that Paranorman gets a little more focus, because this is a great PG rated, really grotesque and really wild, adventurous, thought-provoking, interesting horror film, but also a kids film. Genuinely scary, I've been hearing, and also genuinely really well made. Wanting to hear about that. Campaign dropped in second week. Second week out. It dropped to number 4, $13 million. Sparkle opened to 5th, which isn't terrible. It had a lot. I mean, this was larger than expected. Some people were predicting 8th or 9th. Good for a modestly budgeted, small marketed movie. A- cinema score is really good. Unsurprisingly, the audience was 74% female, 62% above the age of 35. This is a movie with Whitney Houston in it about a woman finding her dream and her voice in 70s Motown. So this is
it's a remake, right?
$11 million is not. Yes, it is. It's a remake of an older film, which I've never seen.
Written by Joel Schumacher.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
What's Joel Schumacher known for?
He's made the worst thing ever made. He made Batman 3 and 4.
Oh.
But he's also done other good stuff. He made
Almost Fire.
Oh.
He made that Colin Farrell army film. Tigerland, which is brilliant, gorgeous filmmaking. People make fun of Joel Schumacher, but when he's small scaled, and when he's allowed to just be a man with a camera, he's great. He does some good stuff. When he has money on his side, he makes the worst things ever made. He's actually
nipples on bad suits.
He's actually, I put Joel Schumacher with money right next to Tony Scott and Michael Bay. And guess what? We're going to talk about Tony Scott in a minute too, because he died.
Yeah. And we should get on to that.
So we're going to get on to that. Yeah. So anyway, Odd Life of Timothy Green opened up, but whatever, it doesn't matter. So we got some other stuff that happened. What else opened up? We got Paranorman opened up, which I told you about. The Odd Life of Timothy Green opened up. If you want to go see it, go see it. It's a manufactured drama with sentimentality, contrived, bland. Jennifer Garner's in it. It's been marketed for over a year, and it's about a family, two people that can't conceive a child, and a child all of a sudden grows out of their garden. Go see it if you want to. Don't see it if you don't want to.
He changes the lives of everybody he meets.
and Disney put this one out, and it's touching and melodramatic, and I have no interest in seeing this whatsoever. Sparkle, I just told you about. It's full of some good music, but it's not as bad as it could have been from what I've been reading. Full of cliches, unoriginality, not as good as Dreamgirls or What's Love Got to Do with It. Cosmopolis came out. Woohoo! That is David Cronenberg's newest one. However, it's a little didactic, overly preachy, full of poignancy and intelligence. However, some will be bored, others will love it. Loopy, weird Cronenberg stuff, based on the novel by Don DeLillo.
You seen it?
I have not seen it yet. I really want to see it.
It's only in like 6 cities.
It's barely being released because they're just hoping that that it just grows. They're doing the American Beauty releasing technique with it. They just want everyone to talk about it and have it take over the world. So that opened that week.
What's the film you were gonna see, Carl? That you're getting ready to see?
The trailer I kept watching?
No, you were talking about that. You were watching a bunch of films that you got from the library.
Oh, I'm very excited about the new Brian De Palma film.
Oh yeah.
Which I don't think is going to be released until 2015.
Yeah.
It's going to be premiering premiering at Venice Film Festival any minute, and then it'll be at Toronto, and it's been selected for the New York Film Festival. And I was watching the trailer. The Toronto Film Festival released a trailer for it.
Oh, I see.
And so that got me jazzed up to look at revisit De Palma.
What did you think of De Palma's last film?
I didn't see it.
Redacted was a little, do you know what I'm talking about? The film where he reenacted a group of a group of American soldiers in Baghdad who killed a family and then a group of Iraqi civilians and then raped a woman, and then it's shot in this extremely jarring handheld style, and it's very vivid and close. It's like very pseudo documentary looking, and it's a little bit different from his style because usually I'm used to the '80s Brian De Palma, the very Hitchcockian, the very vid pans, the very languid, beautiful tracking shots, and this this had tracking shots for sure, but this was as different from the normal De Palma. So I think he gave an interview to the AV Club, and he said, in my old age, I'm just sick of who I used to be, and I'm just ready to just throw it all away. He's like, I'm ready to just literally just. He's like, I'm literally taking inspiration from filmmakers who are doing this, but not doing it very well. He's like, Coppola's doing it, but I think his idea of like reinventing himself is really. He's like, it's kind of gross, and he said that William Friedkin's sort of resurgence is just like these guys are reinventing themselves, but it's not in any good way. So he wants to like genuinely just make the like great new bold adventurous movies. I'm excited as well. I can't wait. Premium Rush just came out, and this is a film that's been shelved for quite a while. I gotta say, I've been making fun of this movie to a lot of people. This is a bike messenger movie with Joseph Gordon-Levitt. When a movie's shelved, it's not usually a good sign. When a movie's pushed back, guess what? Guess what I've been reading about it? It's friggin' awesome. That it's awesome and self-deprecating and like just wildly fun and just loopy. And it's mostly shot in real time, and it's just chase-filled, adrenaline charged. Great filmmaking. Super fun ride. Fast-paced. Silly, but really, really intense and fresh.
And I think it couldn't be better time, since with the fall of Lance Armstrong, we need a new bicyclist hero.
Yeah, and we had a bike movie show
Lance
too.
Lance Armstrong fall, or is he a hero in a way? I feel like he's being a hero. He's like standing up to the system.
Because he was going to get busted.
You think he was going to get busted, or
10 eyewitnesses ready
said
to
he was
testify.
doped. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, this was reported today.
Hey, Elmo, can you unlock the front door?
Yeah.
One of the most sophisticated doping conspiracies in the history of sports.
Yeah, but I think
brought to you by the U.S. Postal Service.
I think that maybe he was also just fed up with it. I mean, maybe it's just one of those things that
He was caught.
I don't mean to be joining the lynch mob.
No, he was caught. Like they literally had 10 people from the one source that is the only source that is willing to overturn a ruling by the committee that by after someone wins the Tour de France, the only committee that they'll take serious about dethroning someone.
But I mean, the thing about it, if you really think about it, he was a winner. You can't do that with drugs. You know what I mean? You cannot. He can't do what he did with drugs. He earned the trophies he won. There's no way that you can do that
with elevated testosterone, though. I mean, like.
Well, then there's gonna be there's other guys that would have been winning.
Yeah.
For the record, the effects in this new bicycle movie, what's it called?
Premium Rush.
They're not done digitally. Joseph Gordon-Levitt really pedaled that.
They don't use any drugs.
They're not digital drugs.
Well, he was on a lot of cocaine during the movie, but he was not doping.
I understand what you're saying. Mm-hmm. Technically, he has fallen, though.
Yeah, but I have a feeling that people might see him as a
he was a hero against cancer, though. I mean, but testicular cancer, that's a big part of the testosterone rush from doping. He was a big hero for cancer because of. I just feel like. Well,
it's yet to be seen. I think that he may end up being. Well, that people might see it as like, well, he stood up to this system that just won't leave him alone or something. That
it seems
or it's maybe something's wrong in general in the whole. But I think that there's no. I think everybody's being doped and everyone they don't know how. I mean, there's no other way to compete probably.
You know.
Well, and
what is that?
That's the Romney's horse in the dressage competition in the Olympics. There were some things about the urine samples there that they weren't resolved. But they said, oh, no, we didn't ship the urine. We kept it over weekend, so how do we know? Oh, no, that's Ryan Braun. I'm sorry.
Well, at this point, I mean, we're kind of getting sidetracked, but
so anyway,
I don't really have much.
So there's one other movie that came out. I don't really want to talk about it. Dax Shepard directed a movie called Hit and Run, which is a throwback to the 70s, sort of Dirty Mary, Crazy Larry type road comedies.
Can we? I hate to say, Gabe, but we don't have. I mean, we only have like 20 minutes.
There's a tie in there because what's the actress's name that Dax Shepard is?
And then his
Kristen Bell.
Kristen Bell, who he's married to in real life. Apparently, they have a really good chemistry in the film, and it's a loopy film. It's unpredictable, but however, it is just not always. It's instead of hit and run, it's kind of hit and miss.
But
anyway,
the plot point in Veronica Mars, one of the best TV series ever, that starred Kristen Bell, where a character committed suicide jumping off the same bridge that Tony Scott jumped off.
And in the upcoming Tony Scott movie,
trying to provide a segue.
And
he committed suicide.
Tony Scott killed himself. Yes,
really?
He jumped off a bridge that is actually a spot where in the movie that he's working on right now, in the upcoming film that he was in pre-production of,
so
a character actually jumps off that bridge. Oh yeah, he's been manically depressed for years.
Wow.
It's been kind of public about that he's been battling depression, and the guy's at the top of his game, both producing and both commercially. But he just, I mean. Here's the thing. Me 5 years ago, I would have said, okay, add him right next to Ronald Reagan and Jack Valenti. He's dead, thank God. But I don't feel that way anymore. I can't literally say that with a straight face. I'm sorry he's dead. He's not my favorite filmmaker at all. In fact, he's one of my 3 most hated filmmakers. But the man contributed to filmmaking. He had a presence. He had a following. He made movies that people loved. And they're not the films that I would love to watch, but I'm sorry that he's dead, and it's a loss for Hollywood. It's not my Hollywood, but he I mean, here's a guy who literally had a huge storied career. I mean, Top Gun was a huge film for a lot of people. It's a part of our collective culture, our collective consciousness. The dialogue from that film, that movie as a piece of male culture. Beverly Hills Cop 2, Days of Thunder. This guy literally, True Romance. And then he started making this flashy, sort of wild, handheld filmmaking because his films and his stories are so predictable and artless that he's like, well, I got to do something artful. And there's literally 420 pops up in almost every of his recent films. Taking a Pelham 1, 2, 3, Unstoppable, Deja Vu, Man on Fire, Domino, some of my least favorite movies of recent memory. But I know a lot of people that love these movies, and they mean a lot to them. So I'm sorry that you're gone, Tony Scott. You were a good producer.
What did you think of his repertoire?
I think True Romance is one of my favorite Quentin Tarantino films. So I like that movie quite a bit. It didn't occur to me to go see any of his movies after a while. Mostly just, I think I would see them somewhere because I thought they'd be entertaining. I like roller coaster, summer, blockbuster movies, but they were... it was more loud and flashy than anything sustained. I didn't find that pleasurable.
Absolutely, I completely agree.
So I didn't check out his movies in a while.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and I'll admit, I mean, one thing I liked about that I'm glad that he had was that one thing that I've heard about directors that especially later in life, the one thing that they love about being a director is that if they can find one actor who they really see eye to eye with or that they love working with, he found that with Denzel. He and Denzel became in real life great friends, personal friends, and every film that he made near the end, his last 5 movies all starred Denzel. So I'm glad that they had that relationship together.
He made The Hunger, right?
He did. That was his debut feature. Yep.
That movie means a lot to some people.
Mm-hmm. That movie's very strange. It's well made, and parts of it are pretty well made.
Hot.
It's hot. It's very hot. David Bowie's not so hot though. After a while.
The Hunger. It took me till you said David Bowie to remember.
Susan Sarandon, David Bowie.
Some people remember
that was an unusual
vampire film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was almost like an art film. That was pretty
pretentious,
different.
It's strange.
Yeah.
It's definitely strange.
Okay, so
anyway,
Chris Marker passed away.
He didn't commit suicide.
No, he died on his 91st birthday.
Wow, that's pretty good. That's a long life. And he was an interesting person because I did a search on him, and I had never seen his face. I'd never seen what he looked like.
He
was very
didn't like to be photographed.
guarded. Yeah, very guarded person.
He hated being photographed. He never gave an interview.
Which is interesting
It's
for a
not
film.
his real name.
And,
Oh, really?
And
It's not his real name? Wow.
And it's been theorized that he actually went to every movie that he was every premiere that he ever went to, because he would never go to his premieres, but that he would go in disguise. And there's an avid fan of his who used to, a man with money, I can't remember what his name is, but he wrote that he had noticed that there was a gentleman with a similar complexion and the hat. He would wear this hat and he would like cover himself up, and he was like, "Who's wearing sunglasses going into the premiere of a movie?" And he noticed that this man would appear at the premiere of a Chris Marker film over the course of years and years. I mean, like 20 years.
Yeah.
And then he kind of put the pieces together, because literally there were no available photographs of him at the time until 1985, when Giant Retrospective on Filmmakers came out. And there was a photo that was put in there, and he kind of put the pieces that it was him. And then after that, he stopped doing that because he didn't want to be noticed or seen. Or he really was kind of a misanthrope in a lot of ways. He loved making experimental documentaries. He studied with Sartre, the philosopher. He joined the French Resistance. He was associated with the Left Bank and the New Wave French film movement. A visual, intellectual, spiritual innovator, refused to calm down or compromise. So that's kind of my summary of him.
Carl, one of the reasons we invited you tonight was to talk about Chris Marker.
Well, because
so
I
like
love
in
cats too.
A few minutes we have
Chris
left.
Marker was devoted to his cats.
Yeah, and he had the
and owls.
Oh, owls and cats. Interesting. Till 12:31, but that's okay. We can go till 12:45. No, it's 12:31 or 33. Let's talk about Chris Marker. What is his? I mean, he made a lot of films, but I'm sure most audience people don't know his work. I know some of his stuff, but I'm not by no means.
I mean, I think everybody, whether they've seen it or not, knows his most atypical film, La Jetée. People might know it as 12 Monkeys. It was remade. It was remade into that. But it's it's a science fiction film that's distinguished, mostly known for this formal device of being shot almost entirely as stills, or presented as a series of stills.
Right.
There's a fleeting moment of motion that happens about midway through, but otherwise it's just there's a voiceover, and all the images, are still images, and it's about time travel. In many ways, it's his Valentine, one of many, to Hitchcock's Vertigo. I thought it was very poignant.
Right.
Shortly after his death, the BFI offered their, every 10 years they offer the best films of all time. And I think for the first time ever, it was Vertigo.
Vertigo overturned
Citizen Kane.
Citizen Kane, right. And we actually talked about that in one of our recent shows, about how that says about cinema
for critics
and people's that in a sense Citizen Kane marked a certain it was like a change of generations in a way.
But yet they're both movies. I mean, Citizen Kane and Vertigo are both movies about loss and memory. So I mean, I think they're nice combos. I saw it personally as like a wonderful tribute to Chris Marker by making his favorite film of all time, the #1 film. La Jetée comes in at number 50. But so La Jetée is a film that people may have heard of or may know. It's, how long is it? Is it even 30 minutes?
It is 29 minutes long.
Wow.
I believe, yes.
And it's incredible that it has so much reputation.
Yeah, well, I think in its idea of, it's about, he was fascinated by memory. And I mean, that's probably his theme that goes through all of his films. But the thing is a beauty, and it's enough of a head scratcher. I mean, it also engages in kind of a loop, and it's also about being possessed by an image. I think it's very resonant with filmgoers. But that theme of memory, a lot of it's traced through in his documentaries. I mean, I think the thing that's like in The Grin of a Cat, or some of his documentaries and in Sans Soleil also, which is sort of understood as his masterwork, which will be playing, I think we can say it now, it will be screening at the Milwaukee Film Festival.
Oh, will.
Coming up.
Sans Soleil, but not La Jetée.
It's connection there. They invited, as a keynote speaker, they're inviting my favorite film writer, not that that's why they're inviting him, but Jay Hoberman.
Oh, wow.
Will be delivering the keynote address at the Milwaukee Film.
Oh, that's pretty.
So they're going to be screening 2 of his films. He's asked to pick 2 films to screen, and it's going to be Sans Soleil and David Lynch's Inland Empire.
Wow.
Will be part of the festival. And that's news. I thought I read it in a Milwaukee Film email blast. But I digress. Sans Soleil is probably, many people see it as his masterwork, and it reflects some of his tendencies of being, of reflecting a supreme form of the genre that he pretty much invented, which is the film essay. And in other words, films that have a characteristic of an essay, meaning a first-person narrator, which he would always distance himself from, not in the same way that he preferred to be anonymous. There would be a voiceover in his films. Often it was performed by a woman or performed by someone recounting the reflections of somebody else. But it was a collection of sort of free-floating thoughts that takes him around the globe as he considers things. And in many of those spots where his thoughts land, they're the site of failed revolution. And that was a source that was of great interest to him. Someone who was very active in 1968, and his, was part of a generation that thought their politics was going to change the world.
Right.
And he's one of those interesting French intellectuals who took that failure as a starting point for a lot of, I think, helpful ways to think about utopia, helpful ways to think about the power of memory. Like the memory is not just about remembering things that failed, or remembering things that almost failed, or remembering things at the moment before they failed. His documentary, Grin Without a Cat?
Grin Without a Cat.
It's this epic documentary about sort of the failure of 1968.
Yeah, I think I've seen that one.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm sorry, I've been kind of rambling on.
No, it's good.
No, please do.
But I mean, there's no one in film history like him, I don't think, just because of the genre that he practiced. And in the way he tried to work cinematically, tried to marshal a form of the essay onto the screen. I mean, by essay, I would say it's like a mode of thinking across a range of topics, effectively tethered to the same thing, but seemingly loose, so that and very free.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never thought about what an essay is, other than a relatively short, a little bit like a news article or something,
but rooted in a point of view.
Right.
Not has elements of journalism and objectivity, but is closer to a first-person voice.
Very direct to the audience and poetic as well too, because like a lot of his works, they're letters to the audience. And so and throughout his whole life, he was still a journalist and he was still a photographer. And his passion was actually journalism, as well. I mean, that's where he got his start, and that's what he continued doing. And he considered film a means of journalism, if not a little bit more poetic. So he loved combining the essence of being able to make a documentary and capture life and sort of play with the idea of memory, but then also change it. Like the idea of being able to sort of play with history or play with the idea of a captured moment. And in writing these letters and unsequencing our mind and unsequencing time, he's capturing you in a moment where you imagine this letter being written, or this person speaking this letter, or who's speaking this letter, and what is the meaning of this letter. But also you're captured in the moment of the image that you're watching. Sans Soleil, I think, does it maybe the best. Grin Without a Cat does it really good as well, really, really well. And
does he use voiceover as much in his other work as with
pretty much everything?
Yeah,
because I feel like that there's something kind of it feels like literature or something to have the voiceover.
Well, but like in Sans Soleil, it's structured that this woman is reading a series of letters of a fictional cinematographer, and so it has this device of grouping this collection of imagery and travels. And I mean, I think for me, what's interesting about the voiceover, and it's not that it isn't a literary device, but is that distance between this structure of the voiceover and the structure of the image, and also the way that it's not Chris Marker. And I mean, even in something like La Jetée, where the story is being told to us through a voiceover, the perfection of that movie is, it's about a man who's able to travel through time because of the fixity of this image in his consciousness. That's distinguished himself between all the other survivors of this apocalypse, and so they use him to travel through time. But as a movie that's structured with stills, there's so many stills in that movie that have their own kind of commanding presence. I mean, there's
universe, I would even say.
Yeah, I mean, they go to as the characters do in Vertigo, they go to a severed tree and like point to the rings, and there'll be these close-ups of these hands midair, point trees, and I think it's such a lovely shot. Or there's this great moment where the voiceover says he's describing something to the woman. I can't remember what he's describing, but he uses his hands to describe a gesture. It's completely cryptic, and that image is just one of my favorites.
I think they're in a museum. They're looking at something in a museum, and he's talking about it, and there's a lot of like. There's a lot of affection and sexuality, which is similar to Vertigo. There's like this sort of psychosexual breakdown of the individual, but then there's the release of love. There's this idea of whether you give in to your own impulses or you give in to the demands of your own psyche or your own id, or you sort of give yourself to the idea or the essence of someone else. And I think that movie just ultimately is about sacrifice. In the end, I think La Jetée is just such a commanding movie, and even I've shown that movie to so many people, and I've seen people break into tears at the end, and I've seen people who have fallen asleep at the end. I love the multitude of reactions I get from it, and that's what I love about Chris Marker, is that he just literally. I mean, I've seen just people be like, that's neat. It's typical of some stuff you've shown me, Gabe. Like kind of loose and arty or whatever and weird. But I've seen a lot of people who have been like, this is absolutely a masterwork. It's in a class of its own.
So you had like some resistance to voiceover, or you said it's not literary, or?
No, I was thinking that in a way his filmmaking is very. I wanted to say seductive, but it feels like reading or something. It feels like the experience you have when you read, and bringing cinema always is criticized for, being too voyeuristic. And by breaking it up into these pieces of stills, accompanied by voiceover, it becomes almost like the first time I saw La Jetée, it reminded me of 1970s film strips that you see in school, and that there's something more educational about it, and I'm not saying that in a critical way. I think that artists, especially filmmakers, especially filmmakers who are trying to convey something heady and intellectual. Well, that sounds kind of pejorative. But filmmakers who are trying to express something profound through cinema, and not just in terms of content, but in the form, I feel like there's a frustration that cinema is voyeuristic, and that it's not as profound as sitting with a book, and that maybe his work approaches what it is to sit with a book when you watch a film. There's some parallel there.
His early films, he was a maker of books. His early films he would translate into books. It was more of a practice I understood in France than ever took here, of making these photo romans of using the imagery from some of his books. And he did a series of, I can't remember the name of the series in France, of travelogues that he used to write before he started making films. But I do think there's a different mode of reception in his work. He was extremely political, to the extent that he was well aware of how all of us have been played by imagery and controlled. And I think there's
it shows in his
politics
behavior.
Yeah.
The fact that he would hide his image from the public.
Wow.
And then also that he would disassociate his voice from the voiceover, replace it with a different voiceover. And that that to me seems like it is a kind of cautious approach or something.
All while making like incredibly personal films. I mean, there is a character of even I can't remember the name, Sandor Krasna, I think is the name of the cinematographer in Sans Soleil, whose letters they are. But it's very much rooted in obsessions. There are clearly markers that are evident throughout the films, like cats. And I'll make these asides. In the work. So it's the thing is about, and this could be a form of hero worship or something, or like assigning genuineness to him, but it just felt like he has all these devices in his work, but they didn't feel, they're very direct. I mean, they don't. You don't experience the distanciation, or you don't experience the device. I mean, there's sort of like sensible ways of him, thinking through something.
Yeah.
And it didn't feel applied as much as it felt like his way of going about thinking.
Like a little bit less direct. I'm sorry, a little bit more direct and a little bit less pretentious. Like just something literally like sort of new, or like just
yeah, it didn't feel like the pursuit of a device or like a formal consideration. It just and like I'm thinking of like The Last Bolshevik is very appreciative documentary about Medvedev, the Soviet filmmaker. And it's sort of like wondering about the fall of communism. And it was like in some ways it was a recuperation of a genuinely communist filmmaker whose mode of filmmaking defied the standards of Soviet realism and wasn't easily containable.
Was that one broken into 3 parts where you showed the same images 3 different times with different narration?
That's a very early film, Letters from Siberia.
You're right.
Where it is sort of an examination of live documentary.
I always get those two confused.
And like his later stuff, he did a piece about this cat graffiti.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Is that the cat with the grin?
The Case of the Grinning Cat, which I just watched the other night. That movie's amazing.
And he also made like some lovely short videos about his cats. So it's all to say that there's a lot of formal experimentation work, but I don't remember him as an experimentalist. As much as or he was experimentalist as essays can be experimental, I guess.
Or that he's just kind of going along his own direction, and it's not something he's chosen. He's not choosing to be defiant. He just is being himself, like reacting to his internal compass or something.
Or there's like the texture of his work is as complicated as the texture of memory, where things can have a temporal valence where they're about 2 time periods at once, or they can immediately plunge you back. I mean, I think there's something. It's like a combination of Proust and politics in some way. That there's easily like the smallest thing can send him onward or backward in thinking about something. But a lot of it was his sympathies with people who risked a lot to try to change the world around the globe. But Sans Soleil, La Jetée and Sans Soleil, I think the Criterion edition of Sans Soleil has both on it.
It's a double DVD, yeah.
Right.
And for people, for listeners at home, I mean, that's the one to engage
That's
with.
the most easily accessible of his works, I think.
And that's a good show of I guess like his body of work as a whole, because they're 2 different types of films, but they're very similar in their poetry and in their tone of what they're trying to, I guess their worldview, I guess.
Yeah, and check out, I don't think I'm spilling the beans, but the Milwaukee film schedule, because there will be an opportunity to see Sans Soleil
Thank
on the
God.
screen.
That's awesome.
That's great.
I'm just
Sans Soleil, not La Jetée.
Oh, I'm pretty sure no, not La Jetée.
Sans Soleil is so good, though. I mean, that's such a. I mean, because La Jetée is a little bit more publicized, and like when I tell people, when I'm like the movie that 12 Monkeys based, like, oh yeah, I've heard about that, but when I say Sans Soleil, they're like, what? What are you talking about? I mean, that really is like it's a poetic sort of drony movie too. It's just, I just think it's languid and it's just, I think it's gorgeous and beautiful. I would love to watch it with an audience. I've only seen it by myself.
Have you seen many of Chris Marker's films in the theater or on DVD?
I've seen them, I guess, projected, most of them. There was an occasion that, like, what's nice is I think we're going to have Chris Marker for a while, just because stuff is, I mean, like, a lot of his writings haven't been translated into English. But there was a few years ago where Icarus Films was releasing some of his shorter stuff, and it's actually a nice season in Milwaukee where Sans Soleil played at the Union Theater. His film, J'espère bientôt, I believe it's called, about a strike in 1968. We did a sort of a series where we had Union Theater, Cream City Collectives, and Woodland Pattern. We had screenings of a number of short films, which was, like the Sixth Side of the Pentagon, which is a documentary on the march on the Pentagon. His only other narrative film he made is a Super 8 film called The Embassy. It's a portrait of people trapped inside an embassy. It was made in response to the coup that brought Pinochet to power. And the joke of the film is that you're with these people in an embassy trying to get out, and then the camera goes outside and you see the Eiffel Tower, and you think, mais non, how could, this is something that happens in Santiago, how could this be Paris? This is not our distance. But, and so we had a screening of that also. So those were, micro cinema screenings of Zork. I saw Sans Soleil. I remember I didn't know anything about it. It was in the Hirshhorn Museum not that long after it came out. And I remembered it was confounding. I had remembered it as being subtitled. I don't speak French, but in French, but I had these vivid memories of this French voice. So I was startled, and that may be something I confabulated. But I was startled the next time I saw it when there were no subtitles, and there's this Alexandra Stewart is her name, who was doing the voice.
I see.
So I was able to see Sans Soleil on the screen as someone who had seen La Jetée, but didn't really know anything about Chris Marker.
Yeah.
I think the thing that I remember the most about Sans Soleil, when you said, is the sound of her voice and of the word remember. I remember his way. I remember and the fact that it's about a male character too. Yet there's this woman saying, I mean, it's just, this stuff is available on Criterion Collection. If anyone hasn't seen this is going to be playing at the, like you said, it's going to be announced, at the Milwaukee Film Festival, but this is something that you can get on the Criterion Collection. It's highly watchable, highly entertaining, and highly beautiful filmmaking. Highly recommend watching this. We're getting closer to the end of our show here.
I guess maybe we might as well just go till 12:45 since it'll just be an odd length show.
Fine.
It'll be like
we've had
hour and 20 minutes.
Calls? I can't remember.
Oh yeah, we take calls.
I wanted my friend Wilson actually call in.
If anyone's listening, you can call.
But we've had Carl Bogner here talking about Chris Marker.
What were some of the? Okay, so we saw the Lorax. We both saw the Lorax moving into a whole different
separately
direction.
too. And completely uncoordinatedly.
And my reaction to the Lorax was that it was definitely beautiful, very beautifully shot, or not shot. It's CGI. It's all computer. But the imagery, all this new animation is just mind-blowing. It really is sort of the things that are happening in the realm of imagery and image enhancement and everything is just, every time you go see some new films, it's like visiting a new country or something, a new world of film. But it didn't feel anything like Dr. Seuss to me. And it also felt very corporate
Yeah.
And yet it was all about how corporations are bad, which I think is doubly disturbing because they've figured out how to commodify even that. They've figured out how to commodify the critique of corporate. I mean, people often, the criticism of America is that it's, Disney-fied. And here's Disney making a criticism of the bad, evil corporate world, but it's Disney. It's a Disney-fied critique of corporations.
It's similar to Disney. It was Universal, but it's real similar. It's pretty much the same thing. And that's like a complaint that I had with it too, is that here's a company, here's Universal Pictures making a film about, like the anti-conglomeratization of the world, but it's like the most conglomerate movie I've seen.
So to me, there's something really disturbing about it. It just goes to show
the hypocrisy of it was just disgusting.
We have a very difficult road ahead of us. Because everything gets commodified,
and it just doesn't have any of the grace or clarity or any of the storytelling wonder, and even the visuals, as gorgeous and as texturized as they are, they don't have the simplicity of, okay, it's time to stop. Like Pixar films are gorgeous and they're this other world, but they know when to say enough is enough. Because the intelligence and the storytelling and even the mise-en-scène is what really stands out. Like WALL-E, even Cars, even the first Cars movie is a great film. And that film, which had like an anti-conglomerate subtext to it, which had like the end, like that film was essentially about the death of the American dream and the end of like the adventure of the American spirit. And that's a kids film. It's a silly movie for kids, but it also is a very serious film. And this movie just is trying to be all serious, but and then there's just crotch jokes and there's just all this like really sophomoric, really stupid, really gross, silly humor. It's just it just didn't fit in at all.
Yeah, and I mean, there's two things about this film. It is based on Dr. Seuss, and yet it's not faithful to his style
at all.
Or anything. I mean, not that you could ever really animate Dr. Seuss very, very successfully. And then because of his drawing style, it's so unique. And I don't know how you would translate that in animation. And then the other thing is the Lorax story is all about us destroying the environment, and yet it's just this glossy.
And it's a remake, and it's a bad remake at that of the original Lorax comic from the 70s, which I thought did a pretty good job of capturing the Dr. Seuss feel, at least in terms of animated edges. That one ended really bleak, and it was sort of anticlimactic, and it ends with a gray sky and a dead world. And this one ends with everyone coming together and saying, "Let's give it a shot, guys," and they sing one of the most awful.
What it reminds me of is someone told me that the cigarette companies, I don't know if this is true or not, that the cigarette companies are the ones who are making the anti-cigarette ads now, that they finance a lot of the anti-cigarette ads. Anyway, it's kind of similar to that to me.
It really is.
Okay, so
the Lorax.
Le Havre.
We both saw as well.
Yeah. And we all talked about Aki Kaurismäki one show a while back. I thought it was beautiful. I was expecting it to be. I didn't expect to be that. I don't know. I just somehow the premise and everything didn't attract me very much when I read about it or saw about it. But it was just so beautifully shot.
I thought it was his opus, to be honest. I thought it was everything about Kaurismäki rolled up into one giant, perfect cigarette. I don't know. I just thought it was just, and the way that the character smokes in the movie, his gestures, the simple things of this man's ordinary day-to-day life in unordinary circumstances, of the choices we make, the way we live our lives, the things that define us by what consequences we take to help another person, the things that ultimately define us as human beings. I was just so moved by this movie, both like in terms of like feeling and in terms of emotion and in terms of poignance, and then just in terms of filmmaking. I mean, he still has that noir edge. He's still just a badass. He still shoots things with like that grainy sort of 16mm look, but like purple and blue and like gray hues.
I thought,
and ugly people too.
Actually,
I love that.
I think the color. I mean, there's something about his cinematographer. It's just I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they make things look so beautiful. every shot, or just about every shot, every framed shot is like from a storybook or something. And it's not, there's not any, you know, it's not glitzy, high tech or anything like that. It's just beautiful.
And the woman was in it too, from the woman that was in all of his early work.
She's in so many of his films.
And the Orange Soda made a cameo too. I was so happy to see that.
What Orange Soda? I'm not sure what that is.
He in Match Factory Girl, he has this one of my all-time favorite shots of any movie is the scene when she's sitting at the bar, and it's just this dirty, filthy scene, and it just and smoky, and it just pans over, and she's just sitting there, and there's so much sadness, but the orange, the brightness of the color of the orange soda is just, I mean, it just, for me, it just sums up the movie. All this ugliness and all this like sort of like small town simplicity and just disappointment, but yet you can still enjoy an orange soda, and god damn it, doesn't it look beautiful. And the orange soda makes a cameo in this movie too. I was really
The film is basically, the premise is that a little boy among a bunch of African refugees get found in a shipping container in the port in Le Havre, which I guess is on the coast of Normandy. And it's a town on the coast of Normandy. And what he does, and actually a bunch of people, his sort of peer group, they all aid each other in hiding this boy.
A shoe shiner, a baker.
Well, he becomes he's a shoe shine man, and then
the main character,
yeah, and then right, he's a shoe shine, and then there's the woman who's a baker and the fruit seller, and they all kind of collaborate in hiding this boy. It's a little bit like the Jews during World War II.
Absolutely.
From the the people who are trying to
very
take him
funny
in.
movie
The thing that was unrealistic was that somehow this was a huge deal, that there was this one escaped child in Le Havre, and it was like this really big deal. It was in the front newspapers, and everyone was trying to find him. That was a little bit hard to believe. And then also I really do respect the fact that he uses these actors who are older, who are not as beautiful as, they're in their older years, just like he himself, and he's still working with people. There are a lot of scenes where the actors are sort of flubbing their lines. There are certain shots where I'm surprised they kept some of the stuff because it was a little bit shoddy, but it's my sense of it was, these people they're getting older, and we can't really afford to do another take of this, or I don't want to put this person through hell to get the perfect take. But there's something, again, it's sort of like a sort of respect for humanity. So anyway, we should probably close out. I have this piece of music from Le Havre, which is this really great rockabilly, French rockabilly guy, and he looks like an old woman. He's a shrubby old man. Rockabilly. His name is Little Bob, and I guess he's it looks like he actually was a big hit singer. Oh, okay. Well, I guess we got cut off.
We were talking with Carl Bogner tonight about Chris Marker and his body of work, and we thank you so much for coming here to speak with us. Zav LaPlay, Gabe Van Handel signing off. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye. Like a blind man flying down 4 wheels on the road. Chubby, he's coming on home. He's coming home now. I saw a painting. I just want to show it to you. It was so amazing. And now we're in the same room. The guitar does touch you, and the uke will save me. I will be saved. You say your heart is where you're happy, boy. I saw you point me on the map. Yeah, 4 wheels on the road. You better look out, cause chubby is on home.
Chubby gotta do his own digging. You say, phony phone cheese, Chubby feels alone and kinda dizzy. There's a silver panel in the sky, and a heart share utopia. We'll get there, baby. You know Chubby loves surprise. And like you said, my eyes love your lips. Like you said, my lips love your eyes. Four wheels on the road. Ha ha ha. Look at Chubby loves it.